Gelsey and Neal. I'm so excited to have you on this podcast. So this is just our basic intro, and we're excited to chat about kind of what you all do and a little bit how you're part of the Easton community. And I think there's some cool stories here as how I've actually interacted with your farm a few different ways, which I'm excited to talk about. So Neal and Gelsey they're part of the Easton Longmont crew. I think are you both Bluebells now?
Yes.
Yeah, both Bluebells. Both their kids train there. They are a big part of the academy. They also teach when they can. They're pretty busy running their own farm and their own school. So we'll see. And Neal is always on different adventures, I feel like, whether it's Africa or Mexico with Gelsey and teenagers, or in Netherlands, fucking tracking down teenagers. In the most dangerous game is what it feels like. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm excited to have them on today. Their business is Laughing Coyote. I pulled this blurb. I was going to give a briefing, but I pulled this blurb off of their website, which I really liked. So I wanted to read it real quickly. You guys probably put this on the website a while ago, so I don't know how often you remember these. If you're anything like me, I'm like, I put that there like 5 years ago and I forgot. But I really like this. We seek a life way that embraces the future while honoring the past to serve as stewards for future generations. We play in all seriousness and practice skills with exuberance. We believe that community has grown slowly and organically through simple, authentic human interactions. I loved that because it's kind of the point of this podcast, and I found it off your website, and I was like, oh, this is just beautiful. Mm-hmm. So I'm super excited to just dive in. So There's my little intro. How are you today? Feel free to take turns speaking.
Yeah, I mean, great. It's a beautiful morning. Our day starts early for the most part, and we get outside first thing to take care of animals and do the work on our homestead, which is almost always a blessing unless it's below zero. But this morning it's a beautiful day, beautiful sunrise, and excited to share these conversations.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm doing great today as well. Because we're teaching all week long, weekends are kind of special family time, also a lot of catch up. But yeah, I'm looking forward to just a good day filled with some exciting things.
Well, I want to apologize for stealing an hour of that, but also say thank you for giving an hour to us.
This is one of the exciting things.
It's always fun to share stories for sure.
Yeah, I feel like you're both always, I don't know what you're like every day, but I've never seen you anything but cheerful and smiling. I don't think I'm like that when you see me all the time. So it's nice to always be around you both. It's a good way to start my Saturday too. Mm-hmm. So let's jump in. We'll kind of just talk about Easton at first. Then we're going to dive into Laughing Coyote because I think what Laughing Coyote is beautiful and it's inspired a lot of stuff at Easton as well. Mm-hmm. And you've brought I feel like a quarter of the community there. So that's also pretty cool. So what originally brought you both to Easton? Or was it your kids?
Yeah, it was our son Lutreo. So I grew up doing martial arts. Everything from, I was kind of looking for the magic pill that would make me a kung fu master thing. And so I'd done everything from like strip mall, McDojo kind of stuff to a variety of more esoteric things. But when we had kids, I knew I wanted them in martial arts, and I knew I wanted them grappling because I wasn't sure what I felt about a 5-year-old learning how to hit things. So when Lutreo was 5, he was kind of going through a rough time. And so we said, well, he needs to do martial arts. So we checked out a couple of different jiu-jitsu academies. But, a lot of friends, one set of friends, the Duns in particular, had highly recommended Easton. So we jumped in, and so he trained for about 6 months and would get on the mat and literally be biting his fingernails. He didn't know what to do. And he was terrified. And very quickly, it was a positive experience. This was Easton Boulder because Longmont hadn't opened yet. I started about 6 months later, and I thought, it'd be nice to do 6 months of jiu-jitsu to understand what's happening on the ground, and fell in love. And I quit everything else I was doing martial arts wise and jumped in. So yeah, that was Lutreo started 5.5 years ago. We jumped into Easton Longmont as soon as it was happening, just in time for the pandemic to make us not be able to train. Yeah. But then got back into it essentially as soon as we were able to with the masks and the whole craziness. Yeah.
When did you start, Gelsey?
I started right before the pandemic, I think.
Right after.
Or right after. Yeah. Oh yeah, because we were still doing masks. That's right. Yeah, so this was almost a year after Lutreo started, I guess. I was not planning to start. And that was not like, I grew up with sports like tennis and volleyball and, very little contact. And I I just couldn't even imagine getting on that. At least from the outside, it just was really unattractive and not appealing. But I saw how much it changed Lutreo and was changing Lutreo, and how much it was affecting him, which was kind of the whole point. And then I do remember he went to his first competition. It was a Fuji competition, and it was like the first Longmont crew. And I think there were like 5 or 6 kids.
Yeah.
And afterwards we watched the videos that I took, and I was sitting there like screaming at him. And I was kind of embarrassed.
You were that parent.
I'm that parent. I've always been that parent. I am the biggest cheerleader for my kids. And for our family, that's just how it is. And I have a really loud mouth when I'm not feeling nervous. And anyway, so I listened to those videos and I was like embarrassed. And I also was like, I have no idea what I'm talking about. And I keep expecting him to be able to do things that he's not doing. And I just was, I got just, the whole scene made me kind of frustrated. And I was like, if we're homeschool parents, we're teaching all the time, like the best way for me to understand what's actually happening on the mat is for me to get on the mat. But I was so, I'm not going to swear, but I was.
You can swear all you want. I curse.
No, but I know, but if other people,
I don't want to give away who I really am.
Yes, I am a very bad, dirty mouth over here. But anyway, I was really scared. And I think my biggest fear was the super sweaty, very overweight, heavy bearded man. Like that.
That's most people's fear.
Yes, I can't. I was like, I'm not having a beard in my face. No, so anyway, I just kept going and watching and kept watching. And then I think, I have to give kudos to Paige, because she was the reason why I started. And she was like, well, you're already here watching your kid, so do you want to just start doing some private lessons? And I did. And there I met a lot of walls. And I also realized that it was something that was totally accessible, and that it was helping me get strong and confident. And so anyway, so I started with Paige, and I did like 2 months of private lessons with her before even doing fundamentals. That's my journey. My journey has been very slow. And then I finally went into fundamentals, and we were in these very segregated groups because of COVID. And that actually helped me, because I kept meeting the same people every single class. And so there were less unknowns, and just been going from there.
Little did you know that the worst training can be bald people.
Right.
Like Jason Dunn, he'll just sweat in your mouth.
Oh my God, yeah.
Sweat that drips off his head into your mouth while you're training.
Yeah. Or like the sandpaper bald was also another one I didn't realize.
Yeah. For me, it's the sweat dripping in my mouth over and over again. Like from certain people sweat a lot. I'm always like, okay, you need, like, it's the baldness, because there's nothing to catch it, Yeah. Anyways, we live in Colorado too, where when you train in the East Coast or Brazil or in humid climates, everybody is just pouring sweat within instance of the immediately starting class, and everybody's just getting sweat in their mouth. So we're like very fortunate in Colorado, where it's not always a swimming pool in there.
Yeah,
exactly.
For sure.
Yeah.
The gross side of all of this.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. I love hearing that, and I think everybody can relate to both sides of those stories, like why they came in. I also love how you talked about, not to pass judgment or to validate, but it resonates with me of like, when I watch other sports, I just sort of stay out of the way, because I'm like, I'm not an expert in this. But when watching jiu-jitsu, when Calvin first started, was very hard for me. Like, I had to sit in the office and hide, because I didn't want to be the person coaching, even on the owner, right? I didn't want to see the person coaching on the sidelines. I didn't want to tell the coaches what to do. But I was like, okay, I've been a black belt. I've taught kids for many years. I've done this for almost 20 years. I need to be able to give some feedback. Yeah. And even that, being the owner, being a black belt of over 10 years, I still struggled with trying to like give feedback so I didn't get in the way of the coaches, even though they were new blue belts,
Mm-hmm.
but I had to like find ways to do it, and it was challenging. I'm better now, but it took me a moment. So I imagine how hard it must be for just like, parents that just have watched UFC or watched, and they're like, but didn't you do this?
Yeah.
You struggle with that now. My dude, you got to chill out. You don't even know what you're talking about.
Right.
Like, I get it, but the kid's going to get there. Give it time.
Yeah.
And every kid's different.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you think being a teacher and a parent, you would recognize that right away, but sometimes it still takes a moment. Like, you get in your own way and you're like, oh, wait, I know. Imagine if this role was reversed.
Right.
And the parent was yelling at, Anyway, it's hard. Self-awareness is hard, and then taking action on it is extremely challenging.
Yeah.
Good on you. Kudos.
Working on it.
Okay. So I think you both coach. Neal, I don't think you coach that much anymore, but I know Gelsey teaches usually because you're busy, but I know Gelsey teaches the women's class sometimes, but you both coach. What brought you into doing that more at Easton?
Well, I mean, so I coach kind of in spurts. I'm about to start coaching assisting in the kids classes again, and I'm hoping to coach some adults this winter. Winter's our slower season. So yeah, I've coached. I started coaching kids classes at like a 2-stripe white belt. Because I think there was a day when Jordan called me and he's like, we're all sick. And I was like, I'll do it. So I jumped on there. So I coached kids for a while. Gelsey then coached kids for a while. I went through the process of coaching adults. Now I just kind of substitute. For me, we teach every day. That's our life. And one of the things that I've learned about myself is my learning style is through teaching. And so, part of it was the desire to give back because Easton has provided so much to us. It's been such a blessing for our family. And part of it was also selfish, that I knew if I coached, I would do so much research and there'd be so much intention behind what I was doing that I would get better. And so, I mean, whether or not that's been the case, I don't know, but I definitely have enjoyed that process quite a bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think when Longmont first started, things were definitely a lot more fluid. There was like 2 stripes coming on the mat and like running entire classes and things. And I think I got dragged in because of that. I think there was one coach, and then it was everybody was sick or out of town for a competition or something, and they needed kind of warm bodies on the mat, and I jumped on as well. I think I also was like a 1 or a 2, maybe a 1 stripe at that point. Just kind of making sure that the kid, I had no idea what the heck I was doing, but I am a teacher, and I do feel like I relate pretty well to kids. And though I wasn't able to really help with the jujitsu side, I could help with other stuff. Right. So that's how I first got on the mat. And I loved it. I mean, I love teaching, and I've had so much different experiences of teaching, not just Laughing Coyote, but I mean, I think we both started essentially teaching when we were teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of different like under the table jobs and things like that, with a whole variety of different kids and different teaching as well,
Mm-hmm.
like of different subjects. So anyway, yeah, that got me on the mat, and I really liked it. And I think I similarly to Neal, of just, I am an over preparer. And so it was helping me get better because I was like studying the videos, taking notes. And then, it's really great when you have a partner that does jujitsu, because then I was like, okay, so how does this work exactly? Okay, what is this? And we would like practice it. And I also had like the jujitsu obsession that happens when you're, it keeps going, but it was like really intense as a white belt, of like, that was all I was thinking about all day long. I actually felt kind of bad. I was like cheating on Laughing Coyote because all I was thinking about was jujitsu. We were getting our students to like be doing jujitsu in the field, because I was like, I really need to figure this out, and I'm teaching this today, and I have to figure out what's going on. And anyway, so yeah, the overachieving of trying to be a good teacher and really understand the movements and the skill and how to teach it and set it up properly. And that was really exciting to me. So yeah, it started out with the kids classes, and then our schedule's just crazy. And so we realized that we both couldn't be coaching. So we have kind of been flip-flopping back and forth of especially for the kids coaching. And then Neal's sort of taken that on whenever we have time, and I've been doing orientations, and again, it's just covering. So anytime somebody can't do an orientation, I try to jump in there, and that has been, I love it. I really love it. I love meeting new people and hearing their story and getting them excited about jiu-jitsu, and yeah, and then kind of following them into fundamentals, and sometimes you get to work with them, and I think that's been amazing. And then also just covering for the ladies class whenever Ashley needs a little break, or I have some time and I get inspired, and I just call it like a little takeover, and I just do some specific skills that I'm working on, or I see that ladies could benefit from. So yeah.
Cool. That all makes sense. And I think that's one thing that you both said. And this is, I've been, when did I start managing? 2010 or so at Easton. And one thing that always rings true is obviously there has to be a level of proficiency. When it comes to assistance, we always try to have 4 stars. When you're a new school, you have to make adjustments because you have to operate. Like you still have to operate, and people get sick. And it's like, well, I don't have a massive pool of people to pull from. We just opened. So it's, how do you do that? Well, you operate and you find the people that are passionate. Maybe they don't have the most skills, but the ones that are passionate and humble are the ones that are going to exceed further than everybody else. We're like diamonds in the rough, right? And I remember being the same way. I was so scared to teach. I still am. I'm still wildly intimidated by it. And whenever I have to teach, I remember learning the warm-up for fundamentals I was a blue belt, and I had to teach a fundamentals class. And I spent 2 weeks practicing the warm-up, and I made Ian used to teach all the time. Yeah. I put him through it at home all the time. And I'd be so worried I was going to mess it up. And then like the day of, I was like, okay. And there was like 25 people in class at Boulder. Yeah. And I'm going through it. And then like I had the tricks of like just paying attention to the person in front, the best one, the most advanced. So you don't get distracted by the junior student who doesn't know it yet, because you start paying attention to them and you're like, and then, and all these little tricks that come, like, I don't know. For me, I'm a big, I think imposter syndrome is really useful. And like, being insecure about something is really useful. Cause like, man, it's either that or you have like fucking wild entitlement and know it all. I would always choose humility and insecurity and imposter syndrome. For sure. Because that person is going to try so hard to prepare to get it right versus the person that comes in thinking they know everything. And they end up being a shitty teacher. Yeah. And like, there's a study that was done around like, who is the best one to teach like a one-on-one class? And it's not the tenured professor, right? It's the one that's recently out of grad school, because they understand the path that person needs to go on much more than the professor's been teaching for 30 years. Absolutely. Right? And we think about that. Like we have fundamentals, like our best instructors on fundamentals are sometimes purple belts or blue belts, because they're preparing so hard. They remember exactly what it was like to be in that spot. And then like people like, we should all black belts teach on the mat. Like, yeah, on advanced, but man, sometimes they're not the best teachers because they call it in, or their ego gets in the way. Or like they just don't see what is needed. So like having beginner instructors introduced to the fundamentals is really important. And then on the kid side, like, especially with like the little tigers, you just need warm bodies to make sure the kids don't kill each other. As long as you have a good leader, right? Like as long as the little kid, okay. And like learning the anatomy of the classroom, where to stand, how to pay attention to all the kids, like having a 2 or 3 star white belt that really understands kids and like how a classroom needs to set up, versus like a blue belt that's like a college kid that is thinking about, drinking that night or whatever it is just sort of standing there with his hands in his pocket. It's like, no, man, that's not, you're fired. Yeah. Like, I need somebody that's here for the kids, that prepare, that watch the curriculum, that actually gives a shit. We have the videos, we have all the stuff, so we can handle that type of fundamental stuff. Yeah. Anyway, you just spoke really, kind of to the heart of all of it.
Well, I think there's a piece, I mean, in any skill development where when you have finally overcome a struggle, like, you have the keys to the kingdom. I think about that. I mean, we'll get into the primitive skills later, but one of the first things I learned was how to make cordage, which is just string from wild plant fibers. I've taught that so many times. I've made probably thousands of feet of cordage. Like it's like I can do it right-handed, left-handed, eyes closed, doesn't matter. It's become so fundamental that I forget how transformative it is. a year ago, last March, I was teaching at this event in California, and I wasn't quite sure what to teach. There weren't that many, like, there were lots of other instructors. I was like, oh, I'll just teach cordage. It'll be easy. I had the biggest classes of the event, and people walked away with this piece of string with their minds blown because it opened up a universe that they didn't even know existed. And I think that, yeah, like as blue belts, I definitely like know I'm a blue belt, like, and I'm very happy there. You know, I'm very happy in my journey, but I know that when I find a little bit of success against somebody who's maybe a purple belt, maybe a little bigger than me, when I find that one little motion, that one little nuance that helps me have success, that when I can pass that on to somebody else, it's huge, because, you know, I feel like my journey is like, it's this like incremental clamber right now where it's like, I'm not like big flashy things aren't happening. It's like, can I get out from underneath this person that I've been under for 5 years, you know? And that little slice of success, you know, when I find it for myself, it's so, I mean, it's huge. And so then, yeah, being able to share that with the rest of us who are just trying to figure out sometimes why we even show up, you know? Yeah. Well, other than the fact we can't stop, but.
Yeah.
So we're going to get to the Laugh the Coyote in a minute. I had one more question kind of thrown your way. So you've been doing martial arts for your whole life, Neal. So like, and this question is for both of you, and thinking about your kids too, I think. But it's a broad question. How has the martial arts affected your life? I mean, positive, negative, any experience that it's really you found transformative, whether that's bad or good?
Yeah.
Oh God, you go first.
I'm a violent person. Like, just that's part of my nature, and I say that, and a lot of people think, oh wow, that's a terrible thing to say about yourself or whatever. There's a lot of value judgments there, but I think, you know, like there's the boys that grow up and they're playing with trucks. I played with wooden swords. Like, that was just, guns weren't allowed in my family, otherwise it would have been guns too. You know, it was like I was the kid on the playground who got into fights. You know, like, and you know, there's you have all these justifications. I'm 6 years old. It's like, well, I'm only going to fight the bigger kids, or, you know, only when there's injustice or whatever it is. But I'm a violent person. That's just who I am in the world. And I think there's a lot of, you know, like, as human beings, we fight. It's something we do, and some of us just are drawn to that more than others. I'm one of them. So I think that the big piece for me actually is when I started doing martial arts, I stopped fighting as much. And I feel like martial arts and jiu-jitsu was huge in this. Other martial arts helped, but jiu-jitsu was the best at sort of taking out that beast and exercising it. So I get to go and fight really hard with all these people I really care about. And then when I leave, that beast is relaxed a little bit. And so I can go through the rest of my life. There's that edge that's always there, but it's less at the surface when I'm training a lot.
I wonder where that goes in when you're a black belt. It's the same reason for me. Same, everything you said was identical. Like 5, 6, 7-year-olds, always in fights, always fighting the bigger kid, always wanted to protect the small kids, like always just feeling violent. And I started jiu-jitsu and it all went away. Like the need to be it existed, but you get to release it in the gym. And now when I go back to training, because I take the summer off for running, I actually become more violent again. So like my whole life, it's like saved me, but now I do these races that, you know, break me mentally. And everything's a little bit quieter. But I find when I start training again for that like 1 hour of live training that I'm more aggressive in the world like I used to be. It's like taking a transition for me where it used to cover that need for me. Now it brings it back out of me. So I'm trying to figure that out. Cause like that was the answer to my problems. Like, oh, I stopped getting in fights, you know, I mean, that and going to jail, you know, I don't want to go to jail. So that's a big part of it. Somebody can curse me out and all in my mind is like, I want to hurt this person, but I'm just not going to go to jail. So redo this. So yeah, I'm curious how it goes in the next 10 years.
Me too.
Gelsey, how about you?
Well, I think, let me see. I mean, of course I started because I wanted to like be part of our family's journey in jiu-jitsu, to like participate instead of stand back. And that's a lot of our life has been like that, where we kind of do what the other person does, because when you do something that we don't really have that many like private things that like just Neal does or just I do. And it's always been like that from like the beginning of our relationship. So I think part of it is that of just being like, I want to participate. I don't want to sit on the outside and not know what my children are going through, what my husband is going through, all of this. So there's that aspect. But I think why I really originally started was because I have an older brother, and he's 4 years older. And I spent essentially, he was a violent boy. And he would take it out on me. I mean, not in like he wouldn't beat me, but he would like hold me down and like shake me or be like, how does this feel? And like bend my fingers back. And, you know, it was just this kind of like older brother constant torturing. And I grew up with that, like literally from the day I was born. I guess there's a story when we were in Italy and I was like in a crib or something like that. And my brother, oh my God, I can't believe I'm sharing these things. Okay. Anyway, there was a crib. I was in the crib. My brother's 4 years older. My mom comes into the room and he's got my hand and he's like bending my fingers backwards. And she's like, oh my God, stop. What are you doing? He's like, I'm just trying to see how far they go. You know, and there was like this kind of like innocent torture that was happening. And I just that was what I experienced my entire life. And so I think that for me, there was part of it of like, I want to feel like powerful and strong and be able to defend myself, you know, and be able to I don't even know if it's defend myself, but like know that I can do it if the situation arises. Whether it's with him or with someone else. But like with him, my relationship has really changed because I know that I can kick his ass. And he is 6'3". He has like size 13 feet. He has, when I put my hands up to his, my hands are like this. Like he is a huge human being. And I know that I can freaking rear naked choke the shit out of him. And there is nothing that he's going to be able to do about it. And so I think that for me, just like there's a personal power that comes with that. And I think that that's why I keep doing it, you know, even on the days that I don't want to, because I have this larger goal in my life to continue to be stronger and more powerful than my brother. And I'm really competitive in a really good way. Like I'm not the person that's going to go out and compete, but like I'm really competitive in other ways, right? Like I'm competitive with myself essentially. Yeah.
And I think just as an interesting side note, you know, we're both kind of high energy, pretty aggressive people, and our kids are not. They're very kind. Very
you guys are kind. Hold on.
Well, yeah, maybe we're kind.
But
they're more, maybe more sensitive. And so it's been really cool to watch them, you know, like where I have to tame the beast, they are finding, you know, they're getting more empowered and finding that edge of being able to push through in challenging situations. So it's just an interesting dichotomy there where our natures are somewhat different.
Maybe it's lack of childhood trauma.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not saying your parents are bad, but you know, lack of education and stuff
we're fixing our
lack of information can, you know, create trauma in kids because the parents didn't know how to deal with certain things. As we have plenty of information now, that excuse isn't really acceptable, in my opinion. I think, man, I relate so much to both of you. Like, the same part of like the empowerment. My dad was kind of a dick. And like, I remember my senior year at prom, I threw the principal on the ground. I punched the principal in the face, hit an EMT in the face. And I was in the Boston General Hospital in the ER, just hanging out in my tuxedo covered in throw up. My dad came in and I hadn't seen him drunk before. And I was jacked for football. I was like getting ready for college football. So and I saw my dad and I was like, he's like 6'2", you know, 220 pounds, always always scared me. And I was like, oh, it's my chance. And I remember like tackling him, choking him out on the ground with like these security guards to pull me off of him. And I like choked him and they're like, you will never touch me again, you know? And I remember that moment, like, I'm not proud of it, but I think I've shared this story before, but the same thing, like, it was, why did I do all of those things? Why did I get big? Why did I try to do football and then get in fights? It was that. It was like I felt so disempowered.
Yeah.
And then I took the power back and I was like, oh, wow. And again, our relationship significantly changed in that moment.
Yeah.
Like he was scared of me for a bit. We sort of recovered, you know, blah, blah, life happened. But like, I never felt disempowered again in that moment. I think that then I was like, wow, I never want to be disempowered.
Mm-hmm.
And I think jujitsu is what did, I used to get in all these fights because I was insecure about myself. Yeah. And then I found jujitsu and I was like, all that went away. I'm like, okay. I feel empowered. I know I can handle myself in situations. There's no reason to. Yeah. And I think now that I do get angry, it's not about me not handling myself or feeling like I can beat somebody up. It's more like I think training jiu-jitsu like increases my testosterone now. And I'm like, I think it's hormonal. I'm like, oh, okay, what now? Like I get out of jiu-jitsu and I'm like, where like I run for 6 hours. I'm like, okay, I just got to walk through the house and survive to get to the couch. Yeah. So it's like a very different, a different thing for me now. It just works me up. Yeah. It's interesting. I can relate so much to both your stories. And I think a lot of people can, you know, and I think it's super interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. All right, let's talk about Laughing Cody a little bit. I want us to, you know, you guys, I'm sure, have your elevator pitch that you talk about all the time, but like, let's hear like what you do and like what got you down that path. Like I know the story, at least briefly, but I'd love to hear from you all.
Well, I mean, the surface right now is that we teach primitive skills. And some people are like, well, what are primitive skills? It's essentially what all of our ancestors used to live and thrive on this planet, you know, starting 300,000 years ago. And so that can be anything from basketry to stone tools to edible plants to building shelters to making fire by rubbing sticks together, everything. And then there's some more what we call traditional skills, which for me are like post-metal technology. So like spoon carving, whittling. Last year we built some Iron Age forges and taught some blacksmithing. So it's a whole range of the skills that we've used as human beings. And in many ways, it's our birthright. You know, no matter what we look like, no matter where we came from, these are the skills our ancestors used. We all come from a hunter-gatherer past. We teach kids, we teach adults, we travel to teach. The story of how we got going is a little more circuitous. We were traveling together. Our courtship was essentially a
courtship.
Yeah.
Courtship.
Well, it's kind of a weird.
I love your language, Neal. I love your freaking vocabulary. You drip in occasionally. It always cracks me.
So we decided to travel together. You know, our families have known each other for a long time. We met kind of in middle school, but didn't know each other well. And then because our parents sang together in a choir. In a community choir, yeah. So we actually met each other through music and do a lot of, world music, harmonic singing, and folk dancing and stuff like that is kind of how things started out. But Gelsey had this dream to work in an orphanage in Brazil. And when I decided I wanted Gelsey in my life, I remembered that and I was like, hey, you want to go to Brazil? And she's like, oh my God, I've always wanted to do that. I was like,
you're like, oh.
So he has a really good memory.
I have a really good memory of like small details like that.
Yes.
So anyway, I was like, well, let's just go to Brazil. That'll be fun. And then, you know, she's like, well, what if we actually start in Mexico? And then, you know, I have a cousin in Panama and then we'll just like keep going. I was like, I don't really care where we end up as long as we're just doing this thing together. So we bought a plane ticket where we flew into Mexico and we had a plane ticket out of Sao Paulo, Brazil, 4 months apart. And I think we had like $1,500 or something. And so and backpacks, and that's what we did. And we kind of worked our way down Central and South America. I didn't even have a visa to get into Brazil. So like in Costa Rica, we went and found an embassy and I got a visa because I was like, otherwise I can't even get home because I have this plane ticket and we have no money to buy another plane ticket. So along the way, we had this idea that we wanted to teach kids. So, as we're like on buses or like hitchhiking on the side of the road, or, in like weird living situations where someone was like, yeah, pitch your tent in my yard. We kind of explored this idea of like wanting to teach kids. And we weren't entirely sure what it looked like. It was, in the beginning, it was going to be academic, but, like building stuff and learning through construction. And we had all these ideas, we were young. And anyway, we got back from that trip and I had no job prospects. So I was kind of scrambling, and my mom said, well, why don't you start that school you've always been talking about? Our plan had been to like study for 10 years and then start a school. And I was like, okay. So I found a place to do it. It was actually with Gelsey's old preschool teacher, had a little farm out near Lafayette. And I was going to get going, and she was going to do a certificate program to get her teaching license. And did like the week-long orientation and bailed. And like, this sucks. So she's like, let's do this thing together. And so we started with 5 students 17 years ago, and didn't even know the term primitive skills at that point. I had done a week-long survival course, so I knew how to, make the cordage I had talked about, and I could kind of do a bow drill fire. That was most of it. And so those 5 kids showed up, and we essentially ran around and like looked at tree bark because we didn't really know anything. And so we just kind of learned on the fly ever since. So we started making up games. We played all these games. We kind of just floundered around. And then 3 years in, we're like, we need to go learn something. So we took a few months off and went to this primitive skills gathering in southern Utah that changed our lives. We heard the term primitive skills. We saw people wearing brain tan buckskin for the first time. Gelsey, in like a week, she wove like 4 giant willow baskets. And from there, we just like went way down the rabbit hole. And so we were still teaching the whole time, but we started traveling to these events around the country, first as students and then as instructors. We would invite people here to be guest instructors, and we just practiced all the time and experimented, and here we are. Yeah.
That's so crazy. It's so crazy that you started the journey together with such a random idea and then stuck with it and stuck together building this business while raising a family, and haven't killed each other. I think it's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I had kind of I had an interesting upbringing myself because both of my parents were potters. My mom convinced my dad to move to the U.S. I mean, they lived in Italy together, but she convinced him to move to the U.S. and he worked in a factory for 25 years. But he was an incredible artist. He didn't even make it through 8th grade in Italy, but oh my God, there's the coolest stories of him like stealing. So he was he was a machinist working in this factory that like wrapped things like cigarettes and chocolates and things like that. And so, like the little wrapper around like the little silver and gold wrappers around chocolates, you weren't allowed to take anything out of the factory, but like he would like pocket like 1 or 2 every day. And he would go home and he made the most, I wish I had a picture of this. It's the most incredible, it's like huge. It's almost human size.
It's like 4 foot.
Picture of,
it's a knight.
Like a knight in shining armor, essentially, like with the shield and the design on the shield and the spear and the hair and it's all like he took those little gold and silver things and he like made them smooth and he fit them all together, and it is like the most beautiful, realistic piece of art. And so like that's his talent. Like his talent was just insane. I mean, I would ask him to draw things because we never had the draw coloring books that you could like, go to the store, buy this coloring book and then just color it in. We never had those growing up. And so I would just ask I was like, Dad, I really want to draw an elephant. And I'd be like, will you draw it for me so I can color it in? And he would just be at the table at the opposite end of the table as me. And he would draw it upside down for me and then just like hand it to me. And so my mom convinced him to then paint pottery. And they did a very similar thing to us. Like they worked together, lived together, raised us kids together. So yeah, I think that I had that as an example in my life of what, one of the many ideas of what a family can be. And so I don't think I could really imagine my life in any other way, of like really living deeply with this other person. And then I feel like we've then taken it an extra step because of the home, we're homeschooling as well. And so it's like, there is a lot of time together.
A lot of family time.
A lot of family time. But I feel like I got distracted from the question, and I want to come back to it, which is just a little bit of like my side, because I had no idea what primitive skills was. I didn't even read any books or have any idea what was going on. But I think because of kind of the artsy side of, well, both sides of my family were very creative, and also willing to like live out of the box a little bit, live differently than what's kind of going around, like what you are exposed to in society. So I went to college and I graduated from Warren Wilson College in North Carolina, and it's a farm school. So I had like farming in my background, gardening, spent a lot of time gardening with my dad. But I really loved art. But I didn't love art in the way that like most people do art. It was like a very different view on, I didn't want to just like have a canvas and like draw or paint. Like I wanted to make the stuff that I was working with. And so when I went to one of my art classes and it was going to be $70 to get all of the supplies, I was like, I don't even have that kind of money. I was on like a full scholarship to go to school. I was like, I don't have $70. I was like, but at one point in our history, like we were making these things, we were making our oil paints and we were making our watercolors. And so I found a teacher that would support me. And I was like, I don't really care about the art class. I want to make the supplies for the art class. And then I want to do the art class. And so she kind of helped guide me in a very sort of minimal way. And I mostly was discovering my own way. And like I was going out and finding different, I was like, okay, so we need colors of soil. And I was like going out and like sampling soil on the property and like bringing home stuff. And I was like putting water in it and sieving it and taking off layers and layers until I had this very fine dust. And I found like 7 or 8 different colors. And then I was like, okay, somehow that color has to bind to paper. So then I was making a binder and I was like rotting milk and using casein, like the egg white, which is like a casein. And I was like figuring out how to mix that into the color and bind it to paper. And then I was like, oh my God, I have to learn how to make paper. So then I learned how to make, and I just kind of kept going back. And that actually was the beginning of me learning essentially primitive skills without even realizing it was just like more art directed at that point. So then, I feel like it makes sense. It was like an interesting kind of introduction. So then when I learned how to make cordage from Neal, I was like, oh my God, this is like exactly what I've been doing, just like art focused. And now I'm doing it with other things and we can get bigger. Like we can get to baskets, we can get to clothing, we can get to all of these. And it's not just about making them, but it's about making them really beautiful. And so for so long, I felt like I was living in these two worlds because we were using survival skills as our term. And this was not survival skills. This was like living skills. So then we kind of adopted living skills a little bit. And then when primitive skills came around, it was like, oh, this is what we're doing. Ancestral skills, like what all of the ancestors from all over the world were doing. It's not just about surviving. It's about making something really beautiful and functional at the same time. So there you go.
I feel like we could do like 5 podcasts. I have so many questions.
Sorry, this is the problem. You invited 2 of us on.
I know, but I'm like wildly inspired. I'm also getting emotional because I'm like imagining I'm sitting in your journey while you're going through it. And I feel like I'm you and this kid in college working through this and finding this inspiration and then deciding how to go this direction. I'm like, as you're telling the story, as you're telling it really well, I feel very much part of it. And I'm like getting emotional. I'm like, wow, because the journey's happening for me in like 10 seconds and it happened for you over years. And I'm like, right. It's a lot to handle. Wow. That was amazing. Both of you. Okay, I'm going to keep down this path because there's like a couple more questions I want to ask, and then I really want to get to the pivot point, which is more like, I think the fun part. This is all fun, but the part that's kind of wild. Any other cool adventures you have coming up throughout the year? Because I know you do a lot of cool ones, or just,
Yeah. So, I mean, the big one, we go down to the Caribbean every winter. We normally bring a group of teenagers, but we're kind of in an off year right now. And so it's just our family and Gelsey's dad. We're going down together. And when we go down there, we do like tropical survival kind of stuff. We head off in the jungle and live in a leaf tent and go foraging on the coastline. And we're really into free diving and spearfishing. And so we do a lot of that. It's funny. I always have congestion issues, so I struggle to equalize when I go deep. But like our kids go like Lutreo goes like 10 meters down and is like spearing fish and stuff. And so, yeah, that's kind of a fun. And Gelsey does a lot of basketry. There's so many, I mean, in the jungle, there's just so many materials available. So that's the big one. And then next summer, we run these teen expeditions. And so next summer, we'll do another one where we take a group of teenagers down to southern Utah, and they get like a blanket and a water bottle and a knife and a little bit of food. And we sleep in caves and fish out of streams. And they learn how to navigate in this incredible slick rock country down there. And it's very transformative. It's one of these things where it feels physically impossible. And then you're all there, like wrapped up in your blanket in a cave, singing, looking at stars like you can't see anywhere on the planet, and nobody ever wants to leave. So those are the big ones. We do a lot of traveling. This year's kind of a slower year for us. So we'll kind of see. Probably the next year we'll get all stir crazy and travel a bunch again. But those are the two adventures. And we want to do like a family. We'll do some family wilderness stuff in the next year. Not quite sure what that looks like. Yeah.
That's cool. All right, let's go to the pivot. I have one more question, but I feel like these are fun. And I feel like every question I ask, we can get to a quick rabbit hole, which
I know.
I don't mind rabbit holes, but at the same time, for the sake of not doing a 2-hour podcast, because I don't think any of us have time for that. All right, let's see. All right, so I'll just kind of pull out throughout these. The whole point of these questions is like the idea is to build like an intimate relationship. So some of these are pretty, and there's like 40 or 50 if I pull from, and I always pull like 10 out that I like how I'm really curious of this person's answer of these questions or these individuals. This one, like, cause you're a lot of people, you have I think your life is a little bit off the beaten path than our normal society, at least the people that I interact with. Maybe not your group of individuals, but for me it is. So these questions might be very different for you, or maybe they're not. Maybe as the universe is, we're all connected the same, from crabs to humans. So who knows? This is to start easy. What constitutes a perfect day for you?
You want to go first?
Yeah, Gelsey. Gelsey has to go first.
Yeah.
No, I hate going first. I need to have time to think about it.
I'll go first. I mean, for me, it's getting up and going outside first thing, for sure. And for us, that is usually chores, which I hate the word chores because it's like something you don't want to do. There's a few times in the year where weird things happens where only one of us will do chores, and we like fight over who gets to do the chores because it's the best part of the morning. So yeah, waking up, going out and doing chores. And then usually we have a late breakfast as a family with just all the stuff from the farm, lots of meat, lots of eggs, lots of raw milk. And then I like to dive into projects. So whether that's, a homestead thing like splitting wood or fixing something, I like to get movement in. So either jujitsu or a workout. And then working on projects just for my own pleasure and enjoyment. So whether that's tanning a hide or experimenting with a new friction fire technique. Right now, my passion is really diving into stone tools. So I spend a lot of time doing that. And, as a family, when we're not really busy, we sit down and eat 3 meals a day together that we cook together and eat. And that's really important to me. And then reading to the kids in the evening. I mean, it's like perfect day of just like a life that I love. There's amazing days of like adventures. Like, yeah, we're going down to the Caribbean. We're like swimming and sunbathing and hanging out with our friends on the island. Like, that's really special. But, I think that the perfect is like building a life that you love. And so that would be my perfect day.
Wow. Well, mine doesn't veer too far from that. We could just like plug in a few different.
Your days are the same, aren't they? Roughly.
Instead of goals, I'll be working on a basket or something. Yeah. No, I would say that. I mean, I think that generally what I would love to have happen in every day, and it's just impossible because it's just too much. There's just not enough hours in a day. But I mean, I agree. We wake up. I do mobility every single morning. Well, we both actually I do.
Yeah, I do it in the evening.
I do mobility like twice a day. So having time for that. Having time, yes, 3 meals a day as a family, cooking everything, and going in, whatever direction we are inspired or excited about. That's sitting down at the table, eating together, extremely important. It's how I grew up. It's what is important in our family. Definitely a project. And for me, it tends to be more in like the basketry realm, but if I could do basketry every single day, I totally would. I would add music in. If there was more hours in the day, I would, whether it was singing or I also play the cello. I'd really love to be able to have an hour to do that every single day. And what else? Yeah, I mean, I think like our evening routine is so sweet, just spending time together, sitting on the couch. We each have a book that we read to the kids and we switch nights. And I love that aspect of it. And I think just, being out on the land with our kids and like, even if it's just a little spontaneous, like let's make a fire together and hang out or
go for a walk.
Yeah. That's just like the everyday kind of usual stuff.
Has it shifted as your daughter's gotten older? Like when she was like 3 or 4, was nighttime a little bit different, or when Latreo was 3 or 4, or was it always this magical time, or is it sometimes?
Always had an incredible evening routine.
Yeah. I mean, well, so our daughter Fiona, who's 8 now, she's interesting because she was sleeping through the night like when she was a week old. Latreo has fought to fall asleep his entire life
and still does.
Same with Calvin's that way.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it's like we've always had the same routine, and then we'd all go to bed, and then, with Latreo, it would be like, okay, he's up, and now we're going to, he's put him back down.
And she would just sleep through it.
She would just sleep through it all. And even now, like, we just built this cattail shelter that Latreo wants to sleep in, but it's like sleeping in it's going to take him a while. So like all week he's been like going out there with his blanket, and then he's there, and then he like comes out, he's like, where can I find this? And then he goes back, and then eventually at like 9:30 he like comes back in with his blanket and he goes back into his bed, and in like a week or two he'll be sleeping out there, and he'll sleep out there for months. But so we've always had a very lovely evening routine, and then sometimes it just doesn't quite end when you anticipate it ending.
And so that's the hard part, like being a parent too. Like I love when we finally get into bed, and like Emily, the 4-year-old, chooses a book every night. And now that Calvin's older, I read a chapter book till the 4-year-old falls asleep. Yeah. And then when I'm done reading the chapter book, Emily sings to Calvin, because we all sleep in the same bedroom.
Yeah.
But like Leo is out by the time we get to the chapter book because he's 4. Yeah. And then Calvin's like wide awake. He listens to every word.
Right.
And then he's like, all right, Mom, now you done, Dad? Okay, Mom, can you sing now? Okay, cool.
Yeah, right.
Fall asleep. He's been having this like sleep anxiety lately now, where it's like, he's like, I'm not sleeping. I don't know what's going on. And it's like, dude, it's okay.
Yeah.
But that's a scary thing. Like, we're not worrying you're not going to sleep. They're not sleeping. So that's hitting him now as he gets older. That's been interesting. It's definitely a change. But I still, man, I wish I was there. Like we always do nighttime together. It's like teeth and all that stuff and floss together. And but still, like Calvin's easy. He doesn't. But Leo is a battle. Like he is still with like, you floss my teeth. No, you floss my teeth. No, you do it. I'm like, okay, cool. Let me floss your teeth. And then they'll start flossing and they'll ask you 20 questions. You're like, oh my God, man, I just want to get your teeth flossed so you can go brush them. And it's just. It's getting better, but man, that I used to like really have anxiety around like the nighttime routine, because like Leo, he's a tyrant. He's an intense person that doesn't like rules or anything, and it's beautiful. I love that about him. But when you're trying to get something done, like getting to bed at a reasonable time, and then Calvin's like, I don't want to miss my book. Leo's because the time's running out, and Calvin starts having anxiety, and Leo's like, fuck the world. And you're just like, oh, it's adorable now. But at 8:00 at night, after being up since 5 or 6, I'm like, come on, man.
Yeah. No, it's all these. So many of these things are great stories afterwards.
Yeah.
Right? When you're in the trenches, you're like, how is this so painful? I mean, we're struggling with that as our kids are older now. They have like activities in the evenings. You know, like jujitsu. They were just wrestling. Lutreo plays guitar. Fiona does aerial dance. Like, and so our evenings. It's like we have this space, but there is no room for error. Like
exactly, because we got to get the home with this. Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't take your shower like in 7 minutes, like you lose the time to read tonight, you know. And it's like, and we all want to read, you know.
I want to read Percy Jackson or whatever it is we're reading right now. I'm still a road dog, whatever it is. But I'm like, and I'm the one that's a stickler for time because I'm like, my day is like 5 a.m. Then I want to get my reading and my journaling and my meditation and my lifting and my running, all that.
Yeah.
And like, so nighttime comes. They're all taking their time, and I'm like, I prepped everything. Food's ready at 4:30 p.m. This way we can. The Friday night is Kung Fu Fridays. We don't always watch a Kung Fu movie, but that's like our thing on Fridays. And all these things I've set up for success. I walk the dogs. I come back from the dogs, and nothing's done. I'm like,
here we go.
We are way behind schedule.
Yeah.
It's going to get pushed back, and I'm going to be frustrated.
Yeah, for sure.
But the next day, it's great, and even in the morning, it's all journal. Like, okay, Mike. Encouragement and patience, not ridicule and being dick.
Yes.
But yeah, it is magical the next day for me.
Yeah.
Beautiful. This one, I'm just curious because I think this would be pretty interesting for a lot of people. The morning routine of what you all do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so are we doing like a Laughing Coyote day or a non-Laughing Coyote day? Okay, if it's a Laughing Coyote day, and that's when we're kind of in the trenches, right? Things are just dink, 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 dink. We're up. I do mobility. We kind of like trade the bathroom kind of thing, right? Like one person does mobility, the other person does the bathroom thing. Then we switch. I'm getting into details here. And then it's everyone out the door. So, you know, this time of year, we're kind of bundling up. We're putting hats and mittens and jackets on and boots. And Lutreo has his own flock of chickens, and he does all of his own chicken chores. Currently, the cow that is in milk, Neal is milking. Her name is Blossom. So Neal does the milking, and I head out with Isaac, and who lives on the farm and teaches with us. We like move chicken coops, feed chickens, give water, feed the pigs, feed the cows. While Blossom is out, we'll give the other cows food. And then she comes back to food, and then it's straining milk at that point. So yeah, it's like, and we just strain off the milk and deal with it. Maybe we're making yogurt, maybe we're making butter, maybe we need milk for the week, for the day or whatever. And then it's breakfast. Essentially, we do breakfast, lunch, and dinner all at the same time. So we're eating breakfast, we're prepping our lunch or making our lunches for the day. And then we're also kind of prepping anything that we need to have for dinner.
Oh, that's beautiful. This is why I asked this question. So I'm like, that is a great idea, because that's when I have the most energy to get shit done.
It's a little chaotic, but it's like, it can kind of all happen. And at this point, the kids are actually helping out, right? Like they're getting their snacks together. They're putting things in their backpacks. But before, it was like literally doing everything ourselves. And they're making sure that they have their hats, their water bottles, and everything is like in their backpack, ready to go.
Getting their jiu-jitsu bag together, and like, we get everything ready in the morning.
Yeah, and if they're doing, if Fiona's doing aerial dance and Lutreo is doing jiu-jitsu, they're getting their separate bags together, whatever's happening that afternoon. And then it is like, essentially, this is where I start to freak out, because it's like, if we're still at the table at 8:30, we're running late, because we need to be outside at that point, everything packed outside, ready to have kids arrive at 9 a.m. And we have a big, like a cart full of all of the projects and things. And, we fill up a water jug and all of it. And so we have our own Laughing Coyote prep that has to happen. And then we kind of like review the day and make sure that, because we make a plan every single Sunday for every Laughing Coyote day. We just make sure that we're kind of on the right ballpark for this particular group. We have all the tools and things that we need. And then it's teach 9 to 3. Simple as that. And then And then it's usually activities start at like 4.
Yeah, 4:30.
Yeah, we're like leaving the farm at 4 for wrestling, jiu-jitsu, aerial dance. And that's the kids kind of take priority when we're teaching. So they get like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, doing those activities. And then if usually just one of us, like if the kids are going in separate directions, we both take them, obviously. If they're both going to jiu-jitsu, one of us takes them. The other one stays back, does administrative work or any Laughing Coyote stuff that needs to happen. Afternoon chores and cooking, like finishing cooking dinner. And then then the rest of the family arrives home and it's showers, dinner all together,
bed,
and then it's like straight to bed. And that's like kids are usually it's pretty fast, but like kids are usually in bed between 7:30 and 8.
All right. All right, here's just jump to another one. If you could wake up tomorrow and have gained one ability, what would it be?
Like realistic abilities?
Whatever you want. Be creative, be boring. Doesn't matter.
I mean, I would say within the realm, like quasi-reasonable, I love languages. So like the piece of my morning routine is I study languages every morning. And
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
we both do our language study
every morning. So if I could, my goal is to speak 5 languages, or at least to start with. I'm at 2 so far. So with like smatterings of 3 others. So yeah, if I could speak 5 languages, I'd be stoked. Then I'd work on the 6th one.
Okay, easy language learning.
Okay,
pick it up.
Yeah.
What about you, Gelsey?
I'm gonna go with something like a little more esoteric. I think I think that I think I would be a better person if I felt less stress in my life and less self-criticism. So if I could get rid of those things, I think everyone would benefit along with myself.
How selfless of you. All right, let's keep going. Is an interesting one. Can you identify or what you would consider your biggest failure so far in life?
Biggest failure.
I usually don't ask them this point, but I figured you two would be fun to ask. Like,
yeah. So yeah, what's really interesting, I would say,
biggest failure?
Golly,
it's a tough question because maybe you don't label them that way. So you can.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is interesting because I feel like there's a lot of forks in the road that we all take, and with looking back, I think, wow, I could have that fork. That would have made things a lot easier, or just the whole primitive skills thing. Or jiu-jitsu is a great example. I heard about jiu-jitsu when I was 17 years old, and then I heard about it again when I was 23. Like, holy smokes! What if I had just jumped in then? That would have been so cool. But who knows where my life would be right now? If I had taken any of those forks. I feel like I've been pretty lucky. And I think luck is a combination of like things appear and then you work your tail off for it to happen. So yeah, like failures for me, I think would be mostly just qualities of myself that I continue to work on, the moments of self-doubt, of insecurities. The fact that my hair is thinning, that really wigs me out.
Dude, I was told that I'm thinning back here by 2 people now, and I'm like,
yeah.
No. Oh my God.
I mean, like, yeah, I don't have a lot. I try to avoid a lot of vanity, but like my hair is a color that's somewhat unique and I'm kind of stoked about that. And if I lose it, I'd be pretty bummed. But yeah, I mean, I think that like so much of the challenges in our life are the choices we've made. I mean, we've chosen to essentially have a 3rd world homestead in Boulder County. So it's like, yeah, there's financial stress all the time. Yes, there's why is our car breaking down again? Yes, why is like why am I fixing the car, the bobcat, the tractor, and a fence? It all has to happen today. But it's just all the life choices I've made, we've made together. So yeah, I don't know. I think failure is a hard one because I think it's all opportunities for more evolution.
Yeah, I struggle with failure. I think that and I don't know if it was the way that I was raised or if it's just like a personality thing, but it's like, it's more of like, well, that didn't work. How can I do this better? Well, I'm really stressed out. How can I change this? And I think that I don't know. Yeah, we live in I think, when people hear about our life, it feels really idealistic and beautiful. And I also, we're under a lot of stress and things are really intense all the time. I think also because we're really intense people. We don't just kind of like let things go. And I think that we also were doing like a whole lot of self-work all the time. And it's work on ourselves, work on our family, work on our kids, like all of that. So I don't know. I struggle with the failure thing. I mean, I'm sure I could take like very specific instances where I really just screwed up. But in the end, I usually, after a few days, can go back and be like, yep, I messed that up. I did that wrong. And it's probably never going to happen again because I'm pretty good at fixing those things.
I think it reminds me of, I try to compete semi-regularly in jiu-jitsu and, we all try to win. We all want to win and we want those medals and whatever it is. I remember every loss I've had up to this point. I only have so many matches under my belt, but each one of those losses, I grew way more than any of my wins. And I think that that's kind of similar view just in life, right? Every stumble we have, we're like, all right, sweet, pick your feet up more.
So I think the failure thing is, depending on who you're talking to, I think it's a trick question, because I believe, I'm not surprised by the answer you said, because I feel like failure is a really negative. The way that question is posed is kind of negative, and I think it doesn't. Failure kind of comes to mind as like a growth mindset thing, like you don't have one. There are things in my life I wish I didn't do, like especially around like hurting people. Like that's like the most important thing. Like, man, I hate. Come on, you can do it. I hate those moments where it's like, man, I wish. I look back and like I wish I didn't cause somebody else pain. But then I have to look and say, okay, what is the upside of this? Like where is the positive? Because we can't change the past. Yeah. So I can learn from that, and at the next time I'm posed with the same issue, I can do better.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. So it's like, I think if I had to answer the question myself, and I thought about this a lot, not that I wanted to answer this question today, but both of you talking made me really think about it. It's like, I think the only failure for me isn't really like now. It would be more along the lines of, man, if I don't have a good relationship with my kids when they're older. And that is like a moment where it's like, I have the time now to make sure that doesn't happen for sure. But for me, that will be the failure for sure. Absolutely. If I screw that up like 20 years down the road, that'll be it. That'll be like, well, you fucked up, and, which is most of my day thinking about how I'm screwing up relationships, all the self-hatred and shame. So it's still possible, but that's how I like look at it as like, that'll be my failure. And there's nobody and there's nothing that can change that. Like I can try to rebuild that bridge, but that for me is important. Absolutely. And with my wife,
Yeah.
So anyway, let's ask one more of these and then we'll get to the closing stuff, because I know we were out of time here. Let's see. That one's too weird. It's like, you have a secret hunch about how you will die, or your house containing everything you own catches fire. After saving your loved ones and pets, you have time to save one thing. What would it be?
We talk about this a lot. We talk about this a lot.
Okay, cool. Which one? The second one?
Yeah, the second one. Yeah, the dying thing is like,
Yeah. So I skipped. I posed it to you. All right. What's the second one? Go ahead.
House burns down. We grab one thing.
Well, I mean, we were put in this situation not too long
Yeah,
ago.
we had
I
an
mean, we're
evac.
very close.
I remember.
To the fact, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I want to get back to the one thing, but I think what was so incredible about that experience was the people that showed up that day. That this is going to make me cry because that was where it was like we saw like who was actually deeply invested in our life and knew that we were going to need help. And I think that's it's like the one thing you can save, but it's also like, have you been put in the situation, or like, have you really thought about what this situation looks like? And it's like, in the end, it's not about that one thing that you save. It's really about like the people that come and save you, you know, and they're the ones that mean the most.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it.
Oh God, thanks. Yeah. I swore I wasn't going to cry. I'm a crier like you.
Yeah. It's interesting because, you know, like for us, the pets is a big category. It involves stock trailers. And it usually a few years ago when that fire came down the front range and jumped over 36, and I was like lying to get through checkpoints to try to get some cows. We were grazing somewhere else and I couldn't get them all, and just opened up gates. And I was like, save yourself kind of thing. I think that, you know, the funny thing is I don't care about any of it, the stuff, you know. Yep.
Most of our stuff we can just make again.
Exactly. Most of it's designed to be like when it's done, you burn it and then you start over. So I would say that, you know, there's like convenience. Like, sure, I'd grab the computer in our file cabinet because it'd be a pain to like get new passports and like remember passwords and stuff, all that kind of stuff. So there's like convenience. What I would say is like just the pictures of our kids when they were little, the picture of Gelsey's mom who passed away recently, like that's important. Of course, I just got a new computer and I didn't save the data well, and we lost like almost all of our photos that we've had from our entire life together. So I guess like that ship has sailed. There are a couple of journals I might grab if I could. But sometimes I'm like, good riddance. We have too much stuff. Can we just streamline this a little bit more? Yeah. So it's the people. Nothing else matters.
Yeah. I was thinking about this with my grandparents passed, and I was really close to them, and I was going through their house with like the whole family. And for me, I lived next door to them, and they all lived kind of further away. So I like was there every night, and they raised me for a long time. Yeah. And I remember walking through their house where I spent my whole childhood there. Like, my parents divorced at 2. And so I was always there all through high school too. I'd always be there. And it was a big part of my life. And everybody's downstairs joking. And I'm like, I remember like being like, okay, I want to take something from this house to remember them by, you know? But I was like, man, there's really nothing, you know? And I remember just sitting in my grandmother's closet, like crying, like this is goodbye, right? There's nothing that I need, you know? But then I remember I was walking out and I saw this like.
Oops.
You just went mute on us.
You went mute.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. Anyway, they were poor as hell. They shopped at the Goodwill and tried to buy new clothes since 1935. But I remember finding this brooch, this little Christmas tree that she wore during Christmas, and it's beat to hell. I take it on races with me. And it's like the biggest piece of crap. It's like it bends, it falls apart. Yeah. And that's the one thing I took. And I was like, oh, well, I'm glad I took it. But again, even if I didn't, I was like, man, I have the memories, and it was okay to say goodbye and just like let it go. And that moment for me was like, there was nothing that I would take other than my family and pets, like except for your point, Neal, like the convenience. Everything else is here, you know, and it's like that's what's important. So I feel the same way.
Yeah.
I probably would grab my cello. It was my mom's cello, and you know, now that she's passed, I feel like it's even more important. And it is like the most beat up piece of wood. It's like over 100 years old.
It's like 150 years old.
It has I think one of the most beautiful sounds. It's also like what I grew up. I've been playing cello since I was in 3rd grade, since I was 9. And yeah, I think that I would definitely grab the cello.
Gelsey has a friend who plays cello who describes his cello as a loose woman because it plays well for everybody.
I love that.
But it is
all right.
Dinged up, and that'd be a good one.
That makes sense. That's an heirloom,
Yeah, it's like got the sentimentality, but it also, it's an heirloom. Yeah.
And it has a purpose.
Yeah.
It's not just, badass. All right, closing questions. Just go back and forth on these. What are your favorite books, and what are you currently reading?
Cool. I'm currently reading. I'm one of these people that reads like 4 books at the same time. So I always read a few relationship books a year. I'm currently reading Hold Me Tight.
Hey, me too.
Nice.
We're going through it with our therapist.
Okay. Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. So I'm reading that one. On your recommendation, I'm reading some Ryan Holiday right now. The Courage one, Courage is Calling. I just started that this morning. We could stop there. I'm reading like a couple of fiction books for fun. Favorite books of all time, super hard. I'd have to put up there in fiction. Sean Turam and the Golden Compass would be way up there for me.
Wow, I'm shocked.
Can we tell the story of our Sean?
Oh, well, Sean Turam was another like courtship thing. Gelsey gave me a copy and then left for 4 months to Europe.
This was like pre-trip to South America.
Yeah.
So he had been traveling for 3 months.
4 months,
and we connected when he came back. I already had tickets to go to Europe
A month later,
and then I was gone for 4 months.
So she gave me this copy of Sean Turam, which is like a door stopper. She brought a copy with her, and we would like read it and like send each other little quotes
and messages. And
very intimidating read.
Like that.
Yeah. So yeah, Sean Turam and the Golden Compass would be high. Man, nonfiction. That's really hard because there's just been so many epically transformative books for me. I would say, oh man, I don't even know if I can do this right now.
Maybe it's not your favorite. You don't have to. You can stop there, or you can just say, "Hey, this moment in your life, this one really helped me." X.
Yeah. Story of the Human Body by Daniel Lieberman really helped me solidify a lot of my ideas about sort of how our bodies were inherited from, our hunter-gatherer past, and I think that really informed a lot of my life. So yeah, we'll go with that. Story of the Human Body.
I've not heard that one before. That's great. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Gelsey, how about you? I love that you put the Golden Compass on there. I read that, I think, in college. Maybe it was shortly after college, but I'm excited. I have that on my list to read to my kids. We were getting through Percy Jackson.
I just read it with Lutreo. Yeah. Again. Yeah. And I was like, this thing is so good. Yeah.
So it turns out that I'm not really a reader. I struggled to read when I was little. And then reading was always a chore because I am a doer. And so why would I sit and read when I could go and do things and learn a lot about myself by doing them? So it's interesting. It was through having children that I rediscovered reading. And I did it because I was along their path. And it was like at the age of, 30, whatever, I went through the whole childhood. I took away the trauma of the story and the book and the reading. And so that was really cool to go through that process with my kids. So I started with the board books and worked my way through. And now I do really love reading, but it turns out that I still prefer to do things. But because of this incredible thing of podcasts and other people reading stories to you, I get to do things and read story and, and listen to stories at the same time. So just in the last few years, I've been actually I can say that I've read more than, it used to be I could only get one book in a year. And I think it's, having children as well and all of that. And so I'm excited about that. I'm excited about just being able to read. And I think I also didn't really know the right genre for me. And I think that just in the last few years, I've realized, and I don't even know what this genre is, but it's like, essentially, I really love reading about other people's lives and their trials and tribulations that they experience and the learning that they have experienced from their challenges. And
the hero's journey.
What?
No,
The hero's journey. Joseph Campbell.
Yes. Yeah. So once I discovered that, it's been really helpful for me to like focus my reading, because I actually struggle with fiction. I'm not really into fiction. I'm definitely not into like sci-fi stuff. So yeah, once I discovered that, it really helped. So
Gelsey has a list.
I'm looking at my list because I can't.
We have a whole Voxer thread, just you and me, Gelsey, talking about.
Well, and from that Voxer thread, so this is like more recently. I would say that like Endure by Cameron Haynes was one that I really enjoyed. Yeah.
That was a good
Yeah.
one.
Started bow hunting, or I got a bow because of him. You know, I just got so into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, I'll say that I also read one that's called The Woman in Me about Britney Spears and her life. And that was like so crazy. And like, there were moments where I was just like, I'm putting this thing down. I can't stand her. Like, I just can't stand it. And then there were other parts that I was like, wow, like she's been through a lot. And like, look at what she's figured out how to, you know, kind of deal with. So, what else? There's this other one called, I just happened upon it was called Wild. And it's about this woman that just like out of the blue, she's going through some stuff, and out of the blue, she decides to hike the PCT trail by herself. And
with the shoes that are too small for her.
Yes, the
Part kills
entire
me.
time. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? But also just like what we like that, to me, that really spoke to like what we think we're supposed to be doing instead of like actually listening to what we're, you know, like she was so disconnected from herself. And I think that watching this journey of her like reconnecting in and finally actually getting the shoes that were the right size, and also then becoming really powerful on the trail and realizing what she could do. So those are the kinds of books that I'm really excited about. So if you ever have any recommendations,
I have so many on that line. I love those books. Like they get me so excited about next stages in life.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, the journeys you go through, especially outdoors after like some type of trauma, you unpack it all. And you guys live this life, I feel like, but that's part of the reason to get outside and spend some time to like through some trials, because you unpack all that trauma and like reconcile with it, and you're able to like move forward after that journey. And everything about the hero's journey is amazing. There's a whole podcast with Vi Burlew about the heroine's journey, which is like the next stage after the hero's journey.
Cool.
Because this is what she studies, and she's a PhD candidate for it.
Oh, cool.
So anyway, all of this, we go on all day about these things. And Wild was fantastic. If you want a book that's going to break you, it's When Breath Becomes Air. It's one of the most beautiful books ever about a doctor's, you know, on his path to death that he discovers he's dying when he's like 35. But it is heavy. But man, it took me a while to read it because I cried so much. But it is that journey, but that ends in tragedy, you know? Anyway, I love it.
Can I just say one more thing? Because I think that this, especially for women that are, you know, in the world of whether it's jujitsu or just taking care of their bodies and figuring out how our bodies work in this world. I've been listening to quite a few different interviews by this woman, Stacey Sims, and she's done a lot of research on just like the active female body. And I'm currently listening to an interview with Andrew Huberman is interviewing Stacey Sims. And it's really, I don't know, it's just really exciting. It's really exciting to have like female specific information, and she's like dedicated her entire life to trying to figure this stuff out, and just how complicated we are as, you know, as humans, but in particular as women, and what, like, it's like this day to day, month to month, you know, year to year, and then in an entire lifespan, how much we change. And putting her time and energy into that has been really inspiring to me.
Oh man, I think my wife is very into this stuff. So like she's like voracious now that she found audiobooks. Before I met her, you'd find her walking around Boulder reading like Leo Tolstoy. Or she'd always be walking, always have a book in her hand, head down, reading. And she's read all the classics And now she goes through like a fantasy book every 3 days. It's like 40 hours long.
Wow.
And then she'll read like Peter Attia, but same thing. And then she's putting down 50 podcasts a week.
Yeah.
But she's very into sports or being active, and like the whole idea around the studies that are coming out now, finally, right, about the female body, like the female mind before pregnancy and after pregnancy, and how much like neuroscience has changed and what they're learning about that, like through MRIs, like your mind is actually different and it doesn't actually go back, and the physiology behind it, like not just like anecdotal evidence, but true scientific studies that are proving how things will shift in you, and it's really cool to see. So I love that. Okay, let's see the last two things. Any feedback for me or for Easton that you can think of, things we could do better, just whatever.
Cool.
We're
Well,
way over our time, by the way, but that's okay.
We're way over, but that's
Just two of you, like you said.
I would say just first, like, there's so like Easton has been a total gift to us as a family. And I would also say like our relationship with you. I mean, we didn't even get to like how we even know you. It's like it's weird, like a weird series of events that like we even are having this conversation. And I would say that. Like my first feedback is like we went through a time with Laughing Coyote where we did not want to run this as a business at all. We were like, can we just teach kids and the rest will figure itself out? Spoiler alert, didn't work that way. Didn't work very well. And like you were so generous to like, the reason we have efficient board meetings is because like you taught me how to run meetings, you know? And now like, it's amazing. We get so much done with our board. We're a nonprofit organization. And so like we have these board meetings and, so I would say that like the generosity, and there are other people within Easton too, who I've been able to reach out to, who have helped us in our martial arts journey, but then also as people running a business, all of the supporting our children, like it's really remarkable. I have like the feedback I would give is because this relationship, like our relationship with you is so special that I would love to see you more on the mat so that people could also have that interaction, you know, like,
I agree.
You don't want to hear that.
I know. He knew that was coming, but like, you know, we get like, we'll train in Boulder and like, we get to train with a mall, which is like, holy smokes. That's amazing. That's just like right there, a couple days a week, he's coaching and as lowly blue belts, we get that experience. We get to train with Huddleston either in Boulder or when he comes to visit in Longmont. I've been able to take guest classes with Elliot. I mean, I would love to see you either, whether it's teaching or whether it's just, you know, attending a class. Like that would be really fun to just like have you present because, and here's the thing, like I understand, like you run this ship and there's a big thing. Like I'm sure when you show up, people get nervous. Or maybe you feel like they get nervous or whatever it is. And so I can also understand there's a piece of stepping back to allow everyone to do their best work. But I'd also love to see you there.
Yeah, I think both can be true, and I think one should happen. And I think now that my kids are older, I agree. Like, and I've said this for a couple of years. I'm always finding new activities that I work during the day, and then like at night I want to be with my kids, and you know, it's so hard. But I agree, and there may be some things happening here the next month or two that will force my hand either way. And I think that the big part of it is that I'm scared, man. I haven't taught or I compete in jiu-jitsu and I win, but it's only because of my previous knowledge and my like the violence. It's not because of my skill set. So I'd have to get back into studying jiu-jitsu, and I think for me, that's the most intimidating part. I want to give a good class. I don't want to be shitty.
Of course.
So I'd have to really not make an excuse, but I'm telling you why that's the case. I'm nervous.
Yeah.
I'm nervous about doing a bad job, and I want to make sure that I can give it my all if I'm going to do it. And I always worry that I won't, but that's not true. Anything that we put in front of ourselves, we're going to give it our all. So
of course,
just me being a wimp.
Yeah.
All right. Last thing. What in life are you most grateful for?
Wait, I need to go back to the previous question.
Oh, feedback. Go ahead. Sorry.
It's not
I appreciate you calling me out.
I know. I just was thinking about it and I was like, I think it's just an interesting discussion. And I think criticism is difficult. It's like hard to be criticized. And I think also, I don't feel like I need to criticize you. But I do feel like having been so intimate with the Longmont Academy from its start, and also being a woman trying to do jujitsu, I think that there are some things that are not being met. And I know that Easton, I mean, I've listened to all, like essentially all the online podcasts that you guys have put out, even pre-interviews, like all the meetings and all of this and that. And I love how much Easton really does care about women and, you know, is putting them in places of power and encouraging them and all of that. But I do feel like, I can only really be critical of Longmont because that's where I've spent the majority of my time. But I mean, I'm also seeing it in Boulder as I train there as well. But that I think that there's a really important opportunity that is being missed by not having more like female specific jujitsu opportunities. What?
That's a tough one for me, but continue.
I know. And this is where it's tricky. Because it's not that I'm saying that only like women should only train with women, but I do think that there is an incredible opportunity when women get to train together. There is an ability to be able to drop your guard in a way and like deepen in that you don't necessarily get to do when you are training on the mat with men, like majority men.
Yeah.
So, and I'm saying this only because recently there was the first ever at least that I've ever seen, women's randori that happened in Littleton to kind of celebrate them opening up, run by Beth Huddleston and some other black belts. And like, I know that she doesn't normally teach. I know that she doesn't normally kind of take that role, but like, it was so cool to be standing on that mat. And I don't even actually know how many. I think it was 50 plus women.
It was a lot. Yeah.
And to stand on that mat and look around and like everyone wanted to go to battle. It was not like, hey, let's socialize. I mean, there was like some socializing, but it was like everyone was so flippin' excited to go against women that looked like them, that had shared experiences as them. And like I, for the first time, got to train with ladies my own size. Like I'm usually one of the bigger ladies on the mat. And I know it comes the other way where there's like smaller ladies and they never get to train with people their own size. And there was this really cool thing that happened. And it was like, you could let loose and you knew that your training partner, they were letting loose too, but we were always gonna like, you were going to see really where your level was at. Because I have to say there is something with men and training with men. And like you guys have testosterone that we do not have. So you encounter any resistance that you don't like. And like I've had guys just freaking stand up. And it's like if it was my own size person, that wouldn't like another lady she couldn't just stand up. And anyway, like I don't really mean to get in the weeds about this, but I do. And I don't know exactly what it looks like. I mean, I do, but it's a whole different discussion. But I think providing a few more opportunities of ladies classes, and thinking about it more as like a stepping stone instead of like, this is the all finish. Like you go into ladies class and you stay in ladies class. But that it's a stepping stone and an opportunity. And also an opportunity, like when you're training for a competition, you can go against other ladies and you're not, training. And it's realistic and you're not being like, well, I think I beat him, but I actually don't know because, you know, so
no, of course
that happen. So anyway, I think that's just something the feminist side of me would love for Easton to explore a little bit more. And give that opportunity.
So I want to qualify my statement. What's hard for me is this. like the women's randori, yes, we Alex came up with that and we pushed it down because we want it, because we think it's really great. Because I don't know what it's like to have the women's experience in jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah.
I've always been like a very testosterone driven 180-pound male, so I know I don't have that experience. My wife trained for a long time. We talk about it. It's like, I don't know, I couldn't do much against men is what she'd say. Muay Thai was a little bit easier for her. So I know that. And for me, I want as much as possible. Where I run into these struggles, you even kind of pointed one out earlier, which hit me a little bit like, that's annoying, is that when we run women's classes, like we have to treat them just like all the other programs. And it's not you do whatever you want. Mm-hmm. And like, that's one thing that I struggle with. Like, we've been doing this for 25 years as a company, and we are trying. So, and I agree, we need as many women opportunities as possible. We need women's being part of building the curriculum. We need all these things. But like at Easton, we have to make sure that we're following our brand standards and our structure. And what happens sometimes, and this is when we get to being like, we get pushback on, is like, hey, we want the women's class. It needs to be a fundamentals class. You don't get your second stripe in there. You have to do intermediate, right? Because we need you to be part of Gen Pop. But also, if you start teaching whatever you want, people will never leave. And they'll just stay in this little bubble of 6 to 10 ladies and never experience anything else. Yeah. And what happens when they make those classes like whatever they want, I'm not saying you're doing this, by the way, it takes away from like what we've built as 25 years of understanding what people need in fundamentals and intermediate to get to advanced. And people will miss that gap, like will miss it entirely, and they'll come into training and they'll get killed because they've never actually learned the stuff they need to learn. Mm-hmm. So for me, like, I love it. And I think we should have a women's, I'm all about a women's fundamentals and a women's intermediate, but it has to be our fundamentals and intermediate curriculum, not whatever the hell we want. Because then you see a one stripe in there that's getting to train live suddenly because they're in the female program, even though nobody else is allowed to do it. Right. And they're getting told like some advanced daily Hiva shit. And I'm like, they don't even know how to do a fucking hip out. Yeah, so like for me, and this isn't just a female specific, this is like when people run morning classes and decide to teach an advanced curriculum to white belts. Yeah. They never get the beginners, and then they move to like an advanced class, or they take a randori with all groups, and they get smoked because they have no idea what they're supposed to do, because people get all excited to teach because they're bored teaching fundamentals. Yeah. Right? They don't teach them what they actually need to learn. So I want to qualify what I mean. What's hard for me is that, not that I want more women's classes. What's hard for me is that I don't want a free-for-all of women's classes, and we get to do whatever we want because we're in the women population. And that's been a battle. Like, hey, just because you are running a women's class doesn't mean you can allow the one stripes to train live. Nobody else is allowed to. Why should you get to? Yeah. Right? They need to be drilling on the side while you're training live. And this for me is always the battle. And like whenever I've tried to push back on that, it's like, oh, you're a sexist, you don't care about us. I'm like, no, you're the same as everybody else. Right? Yes, you're a female and you should have this, but like, don't sit here and tell me that I'm a sexist because you're just you shouldn't get to do whatever you want. Nobody else does, you know? And so obviously I've been doing this for a while and I have some passion around that part of it. But I agree with everything you said, because I think that experience is really important. And like having a place where everybody, having all females in the room, like I'm used to having all men in the room, and I know what that experience is like from sports. But in jiu-jitsu, it's so rare to have that. Right. Because it's been a male dominant sport. And I think it's shifting. And I think we need to keep doing more to build that up so it becomes more equalized. And it takes effort. Yeah. I'm not a big affirmative action guy, but I do believe we have to focus on things to help get them better, you know? So I agree with what you're saying. How does that, everything I say, land?
I want to push back about one thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is the fact, and because I have heard this over and over, that
in Longmont.
Yeah. That there is this thing that men seem to think that if women are all going to collect together in a class, they're never going to want to go out and do another class.
I didn't say that.
Well, no, but you said that if women start doing this women's class and they feel all comfortable in their women's class, they're not going to go and do any other classes. And so far, I have never experienced that. In the 4 years that I've been training in Longmont, I have never seen a lady only go into ladies class and then never go into any other class. And so there seems to be this fear that women are not, like, when they get comfortable and feel good, that they don't want to keep pushing themselves. And so again, I had to take private lessons. It took me freaking 2 months to get past that fear. But once I did, I went into fundamentals and I never turned back, right? Like here I am going and training in advanced classes. And not only am I training at the academy that I grew up in, but I also am starting to train at other academies. So I think that there's also like, we're not going to get stuck in just a ladies class because we're only ladies and that's the only place we feel comfortable. It actually encourages us to go into other classes and see where we're at and what we're like, where our capabilities are at. And then sometimes we can go back into ladies class and be like, well, I'm really struggling with this. If I can do it on another lady, then or somebody my own size, then I might be able to start doing it on that bigger guy, or I might have to change it just a little bit because I am smaller and this doesn't work as well against a bigger do you see what I'm saying? So
totally
to use it as a hub, where we do feel more comfortable, right? But that then gives us the power and strength to move out and do these other classes as well. And again, I don't know a single lady that only goes to ladies class.
I feel like you're putting words in my. By the way, I'm a little hot and bothered. And I love this. We're arguing.
Go back and listen to what you said.
I do want to hear this because what I heard myself say, at least what I thought I said, was that like what I don't like is that they start teaching other curriculum outside of fundamentals.
Yes, I heard
right?
that.
That's so if I said the other part, that's not what I meant. What I meant is like make it more and more interesting. So sometimes it's harder to leave because why should I leave if I'm getting more and more creative stuff in there? Because I'm not going to learn. So what I believe is that it still has to stick to a curriculum so people actually venture out. I don't think it's because they're scared to go out or using it as safety. That's not what I meant. What I meant was like what I worry about, and this happens in not just women's class, but we're really hard on it in the regular programs because we can be. Sometimes when we're hard on it, not now, but sometimes in the past we've been hard on it in the women's program. I've gotten my head bit off. And it's not that I mean, obviously I want everybody to move out into Gen Pop, right? And try that out. But what I worry about is that this is back to that teaching thing. Teachers get bored and they start teaching more advanced stuff. And then people never leave because I'm always going to learn what I need in this class. Yeah. And then it's catering to different levels and then both people are either missing out. And I think, so I apologize if I said that. I don't think it's a lady specific thing. I think it's that specialty class thing where people start doing what they want with it. And like, how would you feel if I came to your school, I was able to teach a class and I taught whatever I wanted and didn't get them through, what they needed to get to move up in the program, Right. And that's where I struggle. Like, okay, if people want to have their own business, they can, but and if you want to get feedback on how I want to do this, we can, because man, I at the end of the day, it's my butt on the line if things go well or wrong, but man, I got 98% of the time, I go with what the majority thinks or go with whatever anybody else thinks. I am always wrong. So I think this feedback is really good. And I think we're missing each other a little bit because what you said, I agree with that last part where you push back. I'm sorry I said that because I agree with that too. That is completely makes sense.
Well, and one of the things that, stepping outside of this is great. I love that you
this, by the way, because I never get this, and I'm like, I feed off of this. I don't mind arguing.
You guys are so well matched in terms of like not like no hold bars conversation.
I'm so happy right now.
Neither of you are going to back down, but probably come to agreement eventually. This is fun, but I think again, not being a woman myself, but through a lot of conversations, I feel like the piece that Gelsey really focuses on a lot is actually has nothing to do with technique. It's in the live training. And so I hear you have the same requirements as everybody else, but have space where women can train with women, because the reality is like what we have this competition culture that's amazing. And more people from Easton are competing, and it's so inspiring to see them out there. And I know for me, I can go to Randoris and Longmont and Boulder and I can find my division. I don't know if Gelsey's ever trained with her division. Maybe once.
It's so hard. Is it never being over 40 and a female? Like it's
exactly.
IBJJF, you make it 2 matches.
Exactly. Yeah. No, like she's gonna have to go to Pans, Master Worlds, whatever, to get matches at all that are in her division. And so I think that it's actually not even like, I think the classes are great. There's everything you need to learn. And like for her, once she got to that point of the 2-stripe white belt, it's like, the technique is available. What's not available is the opportunity to train live.
Yeah. And then okay, because I think it's kind of cool to sort of get to the root of why I brought this up. I think that's perfect.
I love the third party. This is like what Ian does for me. Like he's like, my wife and I are arguing. He's like, okay, I see what you're saying. You're actually saying the same thing.
This is what I heard you say. This is what I heard you say. Yeah.
I'm not like communication over here.
I would add, and this would be, I think this is kind of what I would like to be explored, is that learning, like I totally get it, where it's like Easton has boxes it has to tick and like that totally makes sense to me. But I would also say that like a female teaching, let's say, I'm trying to think of like, let's do a like an escape from the bottom of Mount. Okay. So a guy teaching that versus a female teaching that are two very different things, especially if the female is like blue, purple, and up. Yeah. So I think that there are really amazing things that can happen when a female teaches other females that technique, because we can't necessarily bridge in such an explosive way, but we might have other little tricks that can come in and be taught and help us, definitely like a smaller practitioner, how to get out from that position. And I think that that's where I want to say that, like, when I teach, I don't go off the handlebars and do crazy ass stuff, because I grew up in the Easton curriculum. That's what I know. Yes, there's YouTube, there's freaking Instagram, there's all sorts of shit being like, oops, I just swore, being thrown in. But
I'm gonna have to apologize for Phipps. Sorry, Phipps. This is a long one.
Yeah, well, you can cut this out too. But I think that for me, this is just an interesting conversation that I don't normally get to have with you.
Yeah, I love it.
But like when I go in and I teach, I'm teaching stuff I'm struggling with. I'm teaching places that like I felt were not covered super, super well in fundamentals. They were just fundamental without like expanding on it or being like, well, you got this far, but guess what? Like we told you to hip out here, but actually we need. So when I teach, that's what I do. I go in and I explore the things that I personally am struggling at that moment. Because as a blue belt, I still have so much to learn, but I do have enough that I can help with, the lower belts. And it's not about bringing in brand new, like, at least for me personally, it's not about bringing brand new techniques in. It's about, hey, let's hone in this stuff that like I've been rolling with a lot of you ladies and I'm seeing you do this, and I'm struggling with this when I'm with a bigger person. So let's explore how we can do this with our female bodies and our female capabilities. And then I do have to say that I really, really would love to be able to have more opportunities to do live training with other women.
I agree. I think there should be a women's Midori at all the schools. So we're trying to bring the women's Muay Thai to all the schools. Longmont, Centennial, ones that don't have it right now.
Yeah.
I agree. And what you said too, and I think this is an important part of teaching, and this is what I always tell new teachers, like, listen, you have the curriculum you teach, but in that curriculum, you are different than the other person that's teaching it. So there's going to be nuances that really work for you that the other teacher teaches differently. So like, when I came up, I used to take 5 different instructors classes. I'd take, and I would learn, it'd be the same curriculum all week. And I would learn a bunch of different things each time. And some would work for me, some wouldn't. And there's instructors that you resonate with and ones you don't. Yeah. And I think that's important. Like you have to have a variety, because every teacher, which is different than like a one-on-one biology class, because it's the same instructor all semester. With fundamentals, you can have 5 teachers, and then one may connect with you. One may just have your body type, or one is just understands jiu-jitsu so well that they can talk about all the little nuances that are going to affect your body versus that other person's body. Yeah. And then, of course, with jiu-jitsu, there's this whole idea where, like, you're going to get all this information and none of it's going to fucking matter. You're going to train live, and then you're going to start figuring out where your holes are because you're going to get tapped or passed. And then either you start adapting on your own, or you go to teachers and ask those little things in class. So everything you said resonates 100% with me. And I agree. And I don't build the curriculum. That's Alex through Amal and Elliot and everybody, the DHs that give feedback for it. So I agree. And I think that's not that you're looking for my agreement. I just want to go back to, like, I think everything you said makes sense. I obviously have a perspective on it that comes through, man, I was a GM for 10 years and I just, there's trauma here for me too. And I think that comes out. And I'm not defensive against what you said, because I agree. I think I was trying to like explain the perspective of issues that I've run into from my seat. But every word you said, I think is right. And I think for me, it'd be like, man, imagine we had fundamentals and intermediate and then like a randori, all for ladies at every school, then they could follow the curriculum and they have the randori that they could always train live with other females. I do think that is something that would be beautiful and should be pretty easy to do.
That really gets me excited.
And maybe we experiment.
There is like a whole population at Easton of the moms that are, bringing in their kids. And I've seen, it happened with me and it's happened with all the other, essentially it's a whole bunch of moms in Longmont.
Yeah.
But you see them come in and like, you have to get past that like first bit of just like, this is uncomfortable and this is kind of weird. But they get good really fast because they've been watching their kids for months, And so to like tap into that, I think would just be so awesome. So anyway, I however I can help.
Dude, I fucking love this, by the way. Like, I should have started here, because then we could have just fucking gotten into it and worked through it. I know, but like, this is what's great about jiu-jitsu. Like what you said, like it's violent, but then afterwards it's calm and you can love each other. And I think feedback should be like that. I like the little bit of uncomfortable that I feel. Like I've learned to enjoy it and work through it and explode like a tea kettle and say, okay, let me come back to myself and understand your perspective more. Yeah. So I appreciate that. That was fantastic. And the courage to do it. I love it.
Thank you.
I hope you feel heard.
Yeah, thanks for being willing to listen to. We have these conversations a lot, but when do we get the opportunity to share them and share them with someone that potentially is able to make a difference?
Well, you have Voxer too. You can just fucking leave me long diatribes. Always.
Sounds good.
I love it.
You better watch out.
I'll be like, hey, Gelsey, shut up for like a fucking week, okay?
I know I made this offer, but I'm over it.
I'll just tell you to pause. give me a month to deal with this one, and then we can talk about it.
Yeah.
You all are amazing. I fucking love you both. Thank you for being part of my life. I appreciate you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike.
Same to you,
Mike.
Mike.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for listening, and we're really excited to share a little bit of our story and also just so grateful to the entirety of the community of Easton and the effect that it's had on our family and our lives.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks all. Have a good day.